We are live.
All right. I'm going to go to live.
All right, welcome everybody. Wow, we've already got 23 of you on and more folks coming. Thank you for joining U.S. Cattlemen's Association on this Friday evening. We're here with USCA Vice President Justin Tupper and of course our President Brooke Miller. We are scheduled to go actually live here in about 2 minutes, but thought we'd jump on a little bit early and get you guys ready to go. Vice President Justin Tupper and of course our President Brooke Miller.
Yeah, she was just watching it on the phone and it was 20 seconds behind, that's for sure.
This is a new format for us, so we are working through some of the kinks, but it looks like we're all good. Chime in, drop a comment if you are experiencing any difficulties on your end. Wow, 35 now. Thank you guys for joining. Let's see, a few more minutes here. All right, numbers keep clicking up. Thank you guys for jumping on. Like I said, we're going to be waiting just 4 more minutes here. Make sure we've got everybody on who wants to be on. We're very excited for our first Facts Only Friday. And kind of the format of this video today is there's a lot of things going around right now on social media that are difficult to explain, believe it or not, with all the character limits on Twitter and some of the limits just of Facebook and social media in general. So we were hoping for this to be a forum, a platform where we can interact directly with you all, which is why we have our leadership here who's been working on these issues pretty much nonstop the past few weeks. It's been a real round-the-clock job for these volunteers, believe it or not. Entire board is full of volunteers and folks that are doing this just because, you know, it's the right thing to do. And, you know, we've got a lot of member supporters out there as well. And so we're hoping to give this kind of direct person-to-person feedback here. We're at 8 o'clock on the hour now, or 6 o'clock Mountain for those of you out in a different time zone. I know, Justin, you just finished up your sale today, believe it or not. When did you guys start this morning?
We started with our way up cows and bulls about 10. Got done about, we were actually done with the sale about 4:30, but there's always after sale stuff. So.
How many had you sell today, Justin?
We had just under 2,000 today.
Goodness. All right. Well, shoot, you guys all jumped on early enough, and we might not even need these extra 10 minutes to try to get folks joined up. We've got 60 people on already, so thank you guys for joining. If you're here, drop a little like, a little love button, a comment. Let us know that you're here in the comments. We really like to interact with folks and we want this to be as interactive as possible. So ask your questions, comments, say hello. We'd love to hear from you guys. But with that, we're going to officially kick off. We're about 2 minutes after. Thank you guys for joining. Like I said before, this is U.S. Cattlemen's Association's first ever Facts Only Friday. You can use that hashtag on social media. We'd really like to give a platform for things that are a little bit more difficult to explain than what the character limits on Twitter allow. We want to offer that direct person-to-person interaction. You can ask questions, you know, be more involved in this, learn a little bit more about what's going on. And our president here, Brooke Miller, why don't you tell us a little bit about what USCA has been working on these past few weeks, because we have been just so busy working on a number of things, from truth in labeling to COVID-19 relief aid package to trade issues, and back again. So President Miller, why don't you start us off here and kind of give an overview of what those past few weeks have looked like?
Thank you, Leah. Like Leah said, my name is Brooke Miller, and I'm a cattle producer from Washington, Virginia. And I'm very happy to be here tonight. I'm president of the United States Cattlemen's Association. I want to thank Leah for setting this all up and her technical expertise, and my daughter here at the house for helping me here. I know I wouldn't be on here if it wasn't for both of them. I just want to say a little bit about the United States Cattlemen's Association. It's an organization that I truly believe in. We're very unique in the fact that we are a grassroots organization that members make our policy. We have no mixed emotions on who we represent. We represent cattle producers, backgrounders, livestock haulers, and feeders. And we are quite unique in that we have a full-time presence in Washington, D.C., which is extremely important because, unfortunately, Washington, D.C. is either makes or breaks us as far as our profits go and where the policy is made. So it's very important to have a full-time team there. Like Leah said, the United States Cattlemen's Association has been extremely busy in the last several months. Since the COVID-19 crisis hit, our cattle markets have taken historic plunges, and there's been just a huge disruption in our market. We're working on both short-term aid as well as long-term fixes for our broken market. The COVID-19 relief package, our staff and members have been in frequent contact with conference calls with the United States Department of Agriculture, with congressional staffs and congressmen, and our marketing team has been working pretty much full-time on these issues. Congress has authorized a relief package for about $9.5 billion. That is to cover livestock producers, dairy producers, specialty food services, and some growers of food as well. We think that is wholly inadequate. Our estimates put the losses for just the livestock industry at $14 billion. So it's important for you all to call your congressman, USDA, and be heard on this issue. We also feel that the limits that USDA has placed on payments is very inadequate, and it's very important to be heard there as well. We don't know exactly how USDA is going to administer this, but it will be through a rulemaking process, and it's important. We need, and it's in your best interest to be heard and make comments during the rulemaking process. Another thing that we've been working hard on is truth in labeling. In 2015, when Congress repealed mandatory country of origin labeling, we saw a historic plummet in our live cattle prices, 40% or more in the matter of weeks. At that time, we knew that Congress was going to repeal this because of the retaliatory tariffs that the World Trade Organization had levied, and we were going to lose mandatory country of origin labeling. Our leaders were quite adept in seeing the future, and they knew that there was going to be the wild, wild west, so to say, as far as abusing our label. We tried to get legislation passed that would protect our label so that only cattle that were born, raised, and slaughtered in the United States could carry the product of the USA label. Unfortunately, there was opposition, surprisingly, in the countryside, and what we were left with was a de facto voluntary country of origin labeling where the label means nothing. Packers and importers can bring in both product and live cattle and have it packaged and labeled at the grocery store as product of the USA. So in 2018, we submitted a petition to the United States Department of Agriculture, Food Safety and Inspection Services, calling for closing that loophole and having only cattle that were born, raised, and processed in the United States be able to carry the product of the USA label. We recently, in the last month or two, heard back from FSIS, and they agreed that the labeling situation was being abused and not optimal, and it was confusing to consumers. They agreed that product that is imported into this country should no longer be able to carry the product of the USA, but unfortunately, the Secretary of Agriculture would like to have all imported cattle, no matter where they're from, as long as they're slaughtered in this country, to carry the product of the USA label. So again, that's going through a rulemaking process, and it's very, very important to get on board and prevent this from happening, to get our label back, because once we get our truth and labeling back, then we can move on and concentrate on the bigger fish, which is mandatory country of origin labeling. So we really need your support on this. It'll benefit all producers all over this country, and it's in your best interest to be heard. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about trade. The packers and importers are using trade to basically manipulate and monopolize our market. Not only do they bring in a lot of beef and a lot of cattle, but they're mislabeling it. With the recent COVID-19 crisis, a lot of packing plants are not on all cylinders. I believe they are about 60%, slaughtering about 60% of the cattle that they can slaughter at full capacity. We're certainly thankful that the president has issued an executive order. But unfortunately, I read an article the other day where JBS wants to fill that void of a shortage of beef in the grocery store. That's what the packers are trying to say, is we have a shortage of beef in the grocery store, although there's no shortage of cattle in this country. And they want to fill that void with imported beef from Brazil. We were instrumental and effective in getting Brazilian meat stopped coming in this country back in 2017 because of food and safety violations. And we don't feel that we should be receiving any beef from anywhere that is not FMD free. We're working on or starting to discuss some solutions on getting more cattle slaughtered. The president's executive order certainly will be helpful. But for quite a few years now, we have tried to loosen the regulations and the red tape that are anti-competitive against smaller independent packing companies. And we're hoping the administration will loosen up on those regulations and allow smaller independent packers to slaughter beef and sell it in the grocery store, and also ship it across state lines. With that, I'm going to turn the next part of the meeting over to our Vice President and good friend, Justin Tupper from St. Anne, South Dakota. He's also the chairman of our marketing committee.
Thank you, Brooke. And that's exactly correct. USCA, just a few comments about our group. And we have a great team with Leah Biondo and Jess Peterson and Kelly Fogarty. And they've been working day and night since this outbreak come about, taking phone calls, doing press releases, and making sure that we and our membership can stay abreast and that we can make the changes that we need to do to get through this crisis. I think, Leah, you wanted me to talk a little bit about 30 and 14. Is that what you would like me to go through a little bit at this time?
Yeah, a little bit on 30 and 14 and what the marketing committee has been up to these past few months. For those of you who don't know, USCA is leading a letter on a proposal here that Justin's going to be explaining. We're up to, I believe, closer to 2,700 individual producers signed on in support. So Yeah, why don't we go through that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So we come up with an initiative, basically. We called it 30 and 14, which we would like to make the packer buy 30% of their cattle for each week in every packing plant, a minimum of 30% of their cattle in each packing plant in the spot cash market, and deliver within 14 days. And just a little background on that, and it is a minimum. We did a lot of work. We had, I don't know, 8 or 9 calls with a lot of industry groups and a lot of people when we started working on 30 and 14. It's an idea that was formulated by Corbett Wall and Lee Richmond and some of our leadership group when we were in Billings, Montana, just discussing some ideas that we thought we could do to help out and get some more transparency, along with getting some leverage back to the producer. So we did a lot of calls, and there is a lot of people in the north, up in our part of the world, that would like it to be 50%. I can be totally transparent and say that USCA, myself, and everybody here would like to have 50% too. But we are a realistic group. We want to make sure we can present something that we can get done, and we can get past, and we can get the industry behind it. Unprecedented, I think, in a lot of the people that have gotten behind it. We have people from every organization imaginable, from every state in the union, and a lot of good people working on this. One of the myths that I think I would like to talk about is right now in the north, on average, we sell probably more than 30%. And I'm talking about Iowa and Nebraska, specifically in those states, probably sell more than 30% in the spot cash market. Right now, on average in the South, especially in the deep South, Texas and whatnot, it's under 10%. And there are some plants that have zero cash, spot cash market. So it is a big move for those guys that are used to selling those cattle a different way to get them up to 30% as a minimum. And a couple of things that I think will happen there. The North will continue to sell above it, possibly even it could grow greater than that. If we get those plants in the South at 30 and above, those packing houses, there's going to be fines in place if this goes through how we want it. And they'll get big fines if they don't make 30%. So they're going to continue to buy those cattle at above 30%, maybe even up as much as 35 to make sure that they don't get fined. So we could get that average way up above toward 50% with just doing a 30 minimum. If the North stays at the places they are, or even grows, which we think it will, the average will be way above 30%. And that swings the pendulum back to the producer. And that's what 30 and 14 is all about. We've got to get some leverage back. We've got to be able to get a handle on this packing market. Today, box beef at $3.70 something. And we're selling cash cattle somewhere around $1.50 and less. I mean, it's just, you can't even say how unprecedented that is. And anybody you talk to, it's crazy. But they have all the leverage, and that's what it's about, is leverage. We're not killing enough cattle, so the grocery stores need more. There is no shortage of cattle. We may have a shortage in the short term of beef because we can't get it through the pipeline. And that's important to note. We believe that's a short-term thing. We think, and I think President Miller touched on it, what the president put out there for an order to try to get these plants back online. We believe that'll help, and we can get things going again. But in a nutshell, that's what 30 and 14 is about. And it's about garnering support across the industry. And I think that's really huge in what we're trying to do here, is to be able to get support all the way across our industry. And that's from north to south, from different cattle groups. And we definitely have that, and we continue that. So that's kind of in a nutshell, Leah, where we are with 30 and 14 right at the moment.
Yeah, and you see, I'm looking down here. I'm checking out some of your questions on Facebook. So thank you guys for tuning in. Justin and Brooke, we've got about 130 folks watching right now, which is incredible, from all across the country. Cheyenne from Ogallala, South Dakota. Reen from Oklahoma. We've got Samantha Barrett from Montana. Really good group here. So thank you guys for joining. But we've got a few questions now, and I think this would be a good point to kind of transition into some of these questions and answers, because I think these questions are going to take us down a bit of a rabbit hole. So, you know, first of all here, Karen Cox asks, there is a call for the meat packers to be broken up. What are the chances of that happening? There are monopolies. So I guess, and I don't know, Justin, if you want to explain this first, we kind of talked about what the marketing committee is doing, but what are some of the things that we are looking at to help expand competition in the marketplace, I guess. I'm not sure, you know, we've got this Department of Justice investigation coming up. Many senators have signed on in support of this Department of Justice investigation. And so what happens next, or what direction will USDA go when we're talking about consolidation in the meatpacking industry?
Sure. You know, that's a tough question. You know we have a monopoly. 4 packing houses, 4 different groups basically kill 85% of the cattle right now. Very difficult situation. We probably are short a little bit of packing capacity when you want to talk about it in that sense. And I think this COVID-19 has probably brought a lot of light to that we're short of being able to get these cattle killed because they're in these big facilities that are probably more efficient, and we understand that. But they also probably aren't doing us justice in the fact that we can't get these cattle through the chain when we have one of these events happen. So to his question about breaking up the big 4 packers, yes, that in general, that's a great idea. We would love to see more diversity with that. That's very complex though, because we try to kill around 120,000 cattle a day. They have a very efficient pipeline that does that. So in the process, if they were to ever break up the big 4 packers, how would that look? How would you keep all these packing houses going? These are things that we've discussed. The Department of Justice, I think, we hope, and Brooke, you can allude to this more, we hope that they look into that more, and maybe if they find that they are monopolizing, then we can find a way to break up those packers and get that spread out. In the short term, I think Brooke touched on it, being able to get an executive order possibly. I know our marketing group is going to talk about it again on Tuesday, to get these smaller packing houses to be able to sell across state lines. And this is something USDA has brought to Washington, D.C. 2 or 3 times to try to get changed. It is probably a real need in the short term. But to answer the question, yes, it would be nice to break them up, but there are a lot of complexities with that. If you just broke them up out of the blue, what would we do with all these fat cattle? We'd be in the same kind of bottleneck we are right now. Not saying it doesn't need to happen. I'm saying there's a lot of complexities that would have to go with that.
And that, I think, is one of the strengths of the Marketing and Competition Committee that we've got here. Tupper, you lead those. We are actually just scheduled a standing Marketing and Competition Committee call on Tuesday mornings, because there's just so much going on, especially during the COVID-19 fallout. And so we needed that opportunity to reach out to our committee members and get their input and feedback and really have a pulse for what's going on the ground. And so this is a point where I make a plug. If you want to get involved, we do have openings on all of these committees. We've got marketing and competition, truth and labeling, public lands and environment, nutrition and dietary nutrition, also animal health and ID. I mean, we have an opportunity, we have a space for you on one of these policy committees if you're interested. And all it takes is becoming a member and putting in the time. Our Marketing and Competition Committee, of course, is probably the most busy with their weekly calls, but most of these other committees will meet once or twice a month. And so it's just being willing to put in that time and energy and effort on some of these issues. And so again, all it takes is you've got to be a USDA member, you've got to have the willingness to be involved. But if you're interested in doing that, we have a brand new website. Go check it out, uscattlemen.org. You can sign up there. I'm looking on our comment section now for our next question. And we've got
can I just
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, one other thing that I would like to just add as far as the market concentration. Right now, COVID-19 and this crisis has really brought this into the forefront. What we've known for years, it's caused a historic drop in our live cattle market. It's also caused a shortage of or potential shortage of food and meat at the grocery store. And I think we have to look at what caused the concentration in the packing industry. And you have to look at why they're so competitive. And a lot of it has to do with red tape and regulations that the federal government has put on these small packing plants. And I think they need to take a serious look at that and look at ways to try to increase competition in the packing industry so that it will be natural to have a lot more small packing plants dispersed all over the country to increase competition and also increase our likelihood that this won't happen again should we have another crisis like this. So I think the federal government needs to look at removing some of the red tape and all the roadblocks that occur that really discriminate against smaller packing plants.
No, agree. And I like how you said that this discrepancy in the marketplace has always been there. It's just the COVID-19 global pandemic's really shined a spotlight on that. And we've had a few reporters ask that question, what's going on? They can't understand what's going on right now. And these problems have existed. We're just seeing them come to light now. I'm looking for our next question here. So we are in the comment section. If you've got a question, drop it down below. We're answering them. We'll take whatever you've got for us within reason. We'll go here. Our board member from Oregon, Curtis Martin, says, Oregon congressional delegation is seeking a waiver from USDA for state inspection custom slaughter being able to get to retail. Are any other states doing the same requests? And this is what Tupper was talking about earlier with the Interstate Meat in Commerce New Markets for State Inspected Meat and Poultry Act, introduced by Senator Mike Rounds. But I believe Montana is looking into this custom slaughter. Are there any other states? What do we see happening here in this space where we're talking these small to mid-sized meat processing plants?
Well, thank you, Curtis. I think that's a great leadership role. We had been having a few conversations with some people out your way, and we're just getting started, but I think it's something that could move fairly quickly. Brooke and I discussed it just briefly, but we would like to see an executive order of some sort to get it opened up in the short term. Now, these are things we're going to discuss on our marketing committee call. We think it can happen. We think that we can get this thing opened up, and then possibly when this pandemic, so to speak, is over, maybe we can make it permanent. Those would be some of the thoughts we'd have. But there are a few roadblocks. Obviously, we've got to figure out how to make sure that it's still inspected and the meat is still safe. But there are people starting to talk about it a lot more, and it could gain speed fairly quickly. And we hope this Facebook Live event can maybe shed some light to it, and we can put it in warp speed. Brooke, you got more to add to that?
No, I think you hit it really good, Justin. It's in the infancy stage as far as us thinking and talking about it, and we need to get behind it. It needs to happen.
Absolutely. And I'll say here in DC, there's been a huge push this week to expand these opportunities for these small and mid-sized processors because of some of the issues we're seeing with the big four and COVID-19. And so we're working with a few offices right now to help alleviate some of those issues that the small and mid processors are having, getting cattle and other livestock through the pipeline. So good question, Curtis. Thank you. Looking again, folks, I see you on there. We're looking for your questions. As we wait for more folks to become less shy, it is a Friday evening, so I'm hoping you've got your favorite drink with you and maybe things will get a little bit rowdier. Let's go back to this 3014 proposal because we've heard so many different things about it. And like I said, it's such a complex issue to talk about over social media. So I'm really hoping we can get we can get some more of this out here. And one of the things that folks are saying about the 3014 deal is it would mandate a 70% captive supply. And I'll pause there and let's myth bust that a little bit and explain how that's not true.
Absolutely. It is just the opposite of that. Again, when we say a 30 minimum, okay, and a lot of people, we've heard this said on a lot of our calls. I know Rain Crispin's on listening to us. We've talked, we don't want more government involved. That was one of the things that was talked about a lot on our calls. And we don't either. We don't want government interference in our lives. But right now, just by the way that the packers have been able to buy those cattle, and they've directed everybody down a road where we don't have enough of those live spot cattle, so we don't get a true market. I'll just give an example. Before COVID-19, many times you would hear someone, and I don't mean this bad of the South, but somebody in the South would sell their cattle at a price that most people thought was too light, but because the trade is so thin in the South, in the spot cash market, that would become the trend, and that sets the market for all those contracts and for all those 5 area weighted averages. And pretty soon the packer, he spent very little to get his base price for all those contracts. And we know there's ups and you can get on the grids and all those different things. We understand that. But when the base price is set so low, those ups don't look like they're so good. And we think if you can get a minimum of 30%, and we believe it'll be more, and especially when we can get some of those places that are not trading very much negotiated right now, get them up to 30%. I think it can do a wonder in getting this cash market back where it belongs a little bit. And again, it's all about leverage. And that's what we're trying to do, is put some leverage back in the producer side.
Yeah, I'm hearing right now that there's no cash market. They're just killing captive supply. So 30% would help a heck of a lot right now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's keep going on 3014, because it's been pretty popular on social media. And for those of you who follow Corbett Wall, he's been talking about it all the time on his daily feeder flash. And another thing that we've heard is there's already a solution out there. There's a bill introduced in the Senate by Senator Cory Booker, who's a former presidential candidate, who would mandate this 50%. And like you've already said, we would love to see a 50% minimum negotiated cash cattle. 30% is really our starting point here. And so kind of go through, you know, what happens if we start at 50 and why this bill that's already introduced isn't exactly the solution.
Well, two things. One, Cory Booker is a vegan. That seems to be a slight problem in my book. It also has a lot of things about stopping big CAFOs. There's a lot in that bill that we can't stomach at all. You know, when we talk about how to get this done, this is kind of unprecedented to try to make this move to a negotiated cash level that forces the packer to buying them in that spot cash market. It's a big move, and I understand the frustration and with some of the guys in the north saying that it's not enough, or they want darn sure more to get to 50, because they're already trading at that. And that is true. We get that. There's no doubt about it, but it's not you guys that we're targeting. We want you to continue to trade at that level and more, and we want you to have more leverage. So if we get the South and we get those places that are trading way under 30%, like at 7% average, get those plants up to the 30%, it continues to add leverage to you guys up north in Iowa and Nebraska and Minnesota who are trading at way higher levels. So those are the type of things that are very intricate, and this isn't going to be an easy push. This was tried by, you may have to help me with what senator, and I think he did it at 20%, and it got shot down immediately. About
Grassley.
There you go, Chuck Grassley, thank you. And he tried it at 20% a number of years ago, and it got nowhere. So this isn't something that's just going to happen because we will it done. It's going to have a lot of support, and we do have a lot of support. We appreciate all those that have signed on, and we want to keep continuing to get people on, because it's just not going to be something that's going to pop up and we're just going to get 30% because we want it, and we're not going to get 50% just because we want it. We're going to have to work at it. We're going to have all cross sections of the country and all these cattle groups to get behind us, and I think we're headed in a good direction there.
I think one other salient point here is that, you know, the packers, they may be at 20%, 50%, wherever they are, but they don't have to participate in the cash market each month. Each week. They can, prices are too high, they'll kill captive supply, and when prices come down, then they load up on those spot cash market cattle. So making them be active every week is going to be a huge thing for competition.
Agree. And I just want to reiterate there again, because this bill that's already introduced by Senator Booker, it would eliminate large confined animal feeding operations. It would actually make it illegal to own more than 1,000 head of cattle. And so again, when we talk about we don't support this bill, it's because we cannot support that provision. We have many members who would fit that definition very easily. And so there is
feeders, wouldn't it?
Yeah. There's that definition in there that we just cannot support. And this bill, you can't just go in there and amend it. You'd have to reintroduce it, and you'd have to get the same level of support for this bill, and that's just very difficult to do, especially for such a complex topic. I've had staffers just tell me, you know what, we need the industry to come together because this is a lot. I mean, it's taken all of us just kind of weeks to get up to speed on what it all means. And by all of us, I mean me. It's taken a little bit to get up to speed on this topic. And it's even more difficult to explain to a staffer who might not be from a farm or ranch background and really doesn't understand some of these issues that we're talking about. And we're really looking for a consensus in the industry because we need the industry to come together and present a unified voice. And that's why I'm a little bit frustrated right now, because I just learned from a private message on Facebook that there's another cattle organization hosting a Facebook Live video right now as well. So it's kind of silly that we can't have consensus, that we all can't rally around one issue, and especially we've got to steal like this limelight from each other. It's kind of ridiculous because there are folks out there that are actually hurting, and we've got an opportunity here to move forward with something that's going to work. And it's got to happen very quickly because this program that we are working through, mandatory price reporting, expires September 30th of this year. And that in Congress terms is an incredibly short amount of time, especially when we're dealing with a pandemic. We just don't have the time to continue with some of this, going back and forth. I don't want to say anything worse than that.
Well, I'd like to touch on that a little bit, Leah. And I think that's something that we've talked about a lot within our organization. Some other organizations have went out and they're pushing, trying to get the labeling, MCOOL back. We have it in our bylaws. We support MCOOL. We're going to sign on to that. We're going to support other groups that support the things that we believe in. And I think the unity and to bring these cattle groups together, that's why we've not been able to get anything done in Congress in years and years, because we fight so much amongst ourselves. And we're very small. When you think of the grand scheme of things, when you go to Washington, D.C., the cattle groups are small. And I've heard it directly from my senators up here, Senator Round, Senator Thune, right from their mouth. I wish you guys could come to me and tell me what you need me to do. Because if I go there as U.S. Cattlemen, we have a great idea. And even if it's RCAF or NCBA and it's almost the same idea, and we tell them in 3 different voices, they don't get it. They don't live this industry. They don't do the things that we do day in and day out. So when we speak, we've got to be able to put our differences aside and say, this is definitely for the producer. This is going to help us out. And we need to push behind all those things that do bring the producer back to the limelight. And we can't say it in 5 different voices. And we've got to put some of our differences aside. And we know we're not always going to agree on every issue with all these groups, but we've reached out. I can tell you, U.S. Cattlemen has worked hard to reach out and try to bring industry groups together along with trade groups and get coalitions that work. And I think this 30 and 14 movement, when you look at the cross section of people that we have signed on to it, that's what's going to make it happen. And that's what we have to do if we want to get real change. And you can't shoot for the moon. You can't be unrealistic in some of the things you want. I think that's another thing that happens to a lot of us. Everybody says right now is the time. Well, yes, right now is the time. But if we shoot past something way past that we can't get, then we're going to miss the whole ball game. We're not going to get anything. And we've been down that road too many times, and we can't do that. So we've got to make realistic, lofty goals, and then we have to be able to achieve them. We have to get wins. We have to be able to achieve them. And that's where we are. And that's the kind of coalitions that we want to build. And we are not afraid to reach out across to the different cattle groups. And I think that's a white elephant in the room sometimes. If our calf has something that we agree with, we need to get behind it. And I wish they would do the same. NCBA would be no different. We don't believe in a lot of things. Sometimes they always do, but there are a lot of issues that are the same for all of their members and ours. And if it's right and the right thing to do, we got to get behind it. And that is something that the cattle industry has to do. If we really want to make change, we've got to make some concessions, get together, and I think we can do some great things. But we can't fight amongst ourselves continually and throw snowballs at each other, because it's not going to work.
Well, I'm smiling right now because we get to go to the most favorite topic. We've gotten a few questions already on truth in labeling. And so I think, I want to wrap it up on that. I do, but we did promise the people an hour. So we're going to go for an hour. And as we look at the back end of this Facebook Live for Facts Only Friday, let's touch on country of origin labeling. One question that we got, I'll do it. It's a two-part question. The first one, and let me grab the gentleman's name real quick. William Rupp says, explain what happened with country of origin labeling and the reason it was repealed. And then we had another direct message that asked us to explain the roadblocks to mandatory country of origin labeling and why this product of the USA petition that USDA put forth is our pathway forward right now.
What was the second part of the first question, Leo?
So the second part of the first question, explain what happened with country of origin labeling or the reason it was repealed.
Well, I can take that one unless you want to, Justin.
Go ahead, Brooke.
Well, there was a lawsuit in the World Trade Organization that said that mandatory country of origin labeling was anti-competitive and harming the markets of Mexico and Canada. And the WTO ruled that it was indeed anti-competitive, and the result of that ruling was that they were going to award retaliatory tariffs to both Canada and Mexico against the United States in, I forget how many billions of dollars it was. Do you remember, Leah?
It was billions of dollars.
Billions of dollars. So Congress, rather than trying to stand up and the president trying to stand up for our sovereignty, went ahead and repealed mandatory country of origin labeling. It was basically an overwhelming vote. There were not many congressmen and senators who didn't vote to repeal it. So we lost it. And the ironic thing is when the market dropped precipitously, guess what happened to Mexico's cattle market? That dropped precipitously too. So in reality, mandatory country of origin labeling is good for Americans, Mexicans, and Canadian producers. Getting back to 2015, we had an opportunity to pass a bill in Congress, and Leah McDonald testified in Congress to this fact that we must define our label. Our opponents tried to misrepresent our objective, saying we were for voluntary country of origin labeling. Well, guess what? We have voluntary country of origin labeling, and it's being abused. All we were wanting to make sure is that the American, made in America, the product of the USA label was not falsified and not adulterated and actually means something. I have a lot of consumers. Obviously, we all have friends that are consumers, and they come to me and they all say, "Oh, I'm going to buy USA only beef." And my question to them is how do you know it's USA only beef? Because we don't have a law that adequately describes what product of the USA is. So that's why our petition is so important. That's why Senator Rounds and Thune's bill that's in Congress, I forget the name, what's the name of that bill, Leah? The
The
Meat
US
Integrity
Beef,
Act?
yep, the US Beef Integrity Act.
U.S. Integrity Act is so important is it will prevent these importers and these packers from falsely labeling U.S. beef. And right now, there does not appear to be a lot of congressional support for mandatory country of origin labeling. We wish there was, and we may certainly have to try to put pressure on the executive branch to do something in this respect. But until that time comes, we definitely need to clarify what product of the USA is so that it's not abused by the importers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Agree. All right. And
Justin, did you want to say anything in that respect?
I think you spelled it out real well there. You know, I mean, we all want to know where our meat comes from, and we think we produce the safest, best product there is out there. We don't need other countries, Brazil and some of these other countries riding on our coattails, and they don't have near the standards that we do and the quality and the safety aspect of it. So I don't think we have to go into that too much. Everybody knows why we need it. We just like to get it done. And hopefully, again, during this, maybe we can find a way to get a pathway forward with MCOOL also.
yeah, no, perfect answers. And we're hoping to do another Facts Only Friday. That's my hashtag. Hashtag Facts Only Friday, specifically on truth in labeling concerns. So we hope that covers it for now, but we do kind of want to wrap up with some more marketing questions that came in tonight. So this one, it ties into country of origin labeling when we're looking at imports. And so we got a message on our Facebook page asking, what is the chance of us getting imports slowed down so that we can look out for the American producer instead of foreign interests? And President Miller, this is something you've been working on the past week. Do you want to tackle that, the concept of slowing imports down?
Well, I'd love to stop all imports, to be quite honest. That's a really complex issue because we send a lot of feeder cattle to Canada, and those cattle are brought back into this country and slaughtered. And if we ban all imports coming into this country, we're pretty much stabbing one of our customers in the back. It certainly would be nice for packers to be patriotic and put preference to domestic products, and we certainly would love for that to happen. But it's a complex issue. We'd like to see it, but it's very complex, and it'd have to be done. It'd have to be well thought out. Otherwise, we'd be stabbing some of our customers in the back. Justin?
I just expound on that just a little bit, and it's tough in a time right now when the reality probably is some of the grocery store shelves are going to be a little empty. And it isn't because, again, we have a shortage of cattle. We have a shortage of a pipeline that can't get it there. So I agree with President Miller that it would be nice to shut it down and be able to say that they would only be able to butcher United States cattle, because there's a lot of guys. I have a lot of customers that have been waiting several weeks. They can't get them to kill, to slaughter, can't get a date to get it done. Two things that happen there: we back them up, we make them bigger, we put more tonnage on the market, which continues to put pressure. But when they're selling the meat for $3.70, I mean, it's just crazy what they're able to do with that. But it is a very complex issue, and the easy answer is just stop imports. You know, I mean, and that sounds good and it feels good right at the moment, but there are a lot of consequences that can happen with that. So not that we wouldn't say, or we may come out with a statement when we get done with another marketing call, depending on how need arises, that we may need to try to do that. But I just want people to understand that we don't do things on a knee-jerk reaction. U.S. Cattlemen has a lot of diverse people in our marketing committee and all our committees, and they'll be well thought out decisions. We won't just react because it feels like a great thing to do. We'll react because we think it's the right thing to do for our producers and for everybody involved with the industry. So I'd love to jump on and say we just need to stop it right now, but there are a lot of complexities to that we have to think about before we can just say we have to stop all imports, and that may stop all exports, and that could have a knee-jerk reaction that we don't want. So those are things we have to think about. So great question, especially in this time, and I think emotions run high when we're in a situation like this. So we definitely are thinking about it, and we have talked about it, and we're going to continue to talk about it. Brooke has brought it up many times, our president, and it'll be a topic of conversation going forward this next week.
Agree. Well, we are closing in here, folks. So if you've got any last minute questions, drop them in the comments. We'll be on up until the top of the next hour here. We've got a question here. We're going back to 3014. Samantha Ferret from Montana, and all of us met up with the Ferrets in Montana, brand new members. We met them at the Winter Thaw in Billings, Montana. Thank you guys for your support. Really appreciate you chiming in or tuning in rather here to our Facebook Live too. Samantha asked, we totally support 3014, but is there any thoughts about the possibility of the packers passing the cost to consumers, resulting in overpricing beef at the meat counter? So does the 3014 proposal address such concerns, or is there any concerns there with this price being passed on to the consumers?
Great question. And I think we have thought of that. And anytime we have an action or a reaction, especially in something to do with the packers, they have a lot of money and smart people, and they're going to be thinking one or two steps ahead. Right now, with the light that's going on, they set the price. Boxed beef price is set by the packer. We've had discussions in our marketing calls about the spot live market in the CME being tied to boxes. Well, right now, obviously that would be a great thing. But what happens when they have all the meat they want around and they want to lower the price and we have it tied to boxes? They control that. So yes, to answer your question correctly, yes, we have thought about it. Yes, we probably know that when we enact, if it goes through 30 and 14, they're going to make some changes to their marketing model, and we're going to have to be ready to react again. And that's where we're going to be in place to do that, because they're not just going to sit back and if we make changes that affect their bottom line, take it, so to speak, they're going to make changes too. And we're going to have to be ready to react to those as they happen. But tying that to boxes is a difficult scenario because the packer decides what those box prices are. Look what's going on right now today. Hopefully that answered your question.
We don't have much of a spot market right now, and they've really bumped up the box beef prices to record high. So I wouldn't put anything past them. That's why I chuckled.
Goodness. All right. We've got a few more questions coming in here. I'm waiting. Let's see, are we going to take? Let's do another marketing question. Casey Schumacher, can you guys talk about the difference between the physical cattle market and the board, and how the board, this might be a typo, and how the board has worked to fix it as well? So kind of go through those discrepancies. We should have started out maybe with this, but maybe just a brief overview of how the physical cattle market and the board tie together, and maybe talk about some of USDA's work. Again, we probably should have started with this, but Casey, thank you for the question, so we can go over it if you feel a little lost right now.
Justin, I'll defer to you on this one.
Yep, I'll touch on it a little bit. In USDA has been in direct contract with the CME. Now the CME, you need to know, is a for-profit group. They obviously make trades and set policies and do things because they need to make money. They also were set up and they're under the auspice that they have to operate in a way that the markets converge. And we saw something happen here that is pretty unprecedented. We were selling fat cattle a couple times during the spot month of April, clear up to $1.20, and we had a board that was under $1. And at the end of the month, which happened yesterday, that is supposed to converge. And the April spot live went off at, I believe it was $4.50 higher and ended right around $90 or just over $90, somewhere in that range. And we were selling some cattle from 95 to $1. So they got some semblance of convergence there. But again, COVID-19 has brought up some spots where we know we have huge issues. Again, these are problems that we know we have. Finding buyers to be on the buy side of the live cattle market has been difficult. It used to be the packers, used to be the big retailers. They would hedge their bet and be a buyer in that market. Today, we rely on a lot of those big fund groups. Those are the only buyers that come in and pick up that market. So we are in direct contact with the CME. They have engaged with us, and we are talking ideas back and forth, ways that we can make that a better place to be. And so it's a true hedger's market. Right now, in the way the market has went today, if you had your cattle hedged, you loved it because you were selling your live cattle for somewhere in the $1 to $1.05, and you were able to get out of your contracts probably in the 80s somewhere as you sold here. So you had quite a bit of pickup in that board. But those are things that are not exactly functional when we talk about a fully functional market. We have some really great people on our market committee, Brett Crosby, Lee Richmond, who can speak to this way better than I can. But hopefully that gave you a brief overview of how that might work. And just that we are definitely engaged daily with the CME, trying to work on changes that can help us out with this market in the way we are today.
All right. Wow. We are approaching quickly the top of the hour here, and I'm looking at some of these questions. Awesome job for those of you tuning in. Thank you for keeping the conversation going in the comment section. I'm sure both our president and vice president are going to jump on over to the comments after this to go through and answer anything that maybe we haven't answered yet on this call. And you'll see me there as well. I'll make sure to address some of these questions as they come up. But as we're approaching the top of the hour here, we might start winding down. And again, just wanted to say thank you for tuning in, especially on a Friday evening, no less. But any closing thoughts from either of you? Maybe we'll start with our vice president here, and our president will bring us home. But Justin, any closing thoughts for the folks that are watching here?
I sure would. We appreciate everybody getting on. I tell you, I think I've never seen a groundswell in our neck of the woods up here in Western South Dakota like we have with this COVID-19. And it is a time that we have to get active. If we want to continue to live our lives the way we want to, we've got to get in there. We've got to get our hands dirty, and we've got to make some real change. And I've seen it. We've done some unprecedented stuff up here in South Dakota. We've got South Dakota stock growers and South Dakota cattlemen have signed on to the same thing. We haven't been able to do that very often. And I think being able to get these groups in a room and talking and getting them to sign on to one specific thing, and then we can just build on that. If we can get these groups to come together, I think we can literally move mountains. But we've got to be able to get these people together. We've got to stop the infighting. If there's stuff we disagree on, hey, I'm all for it. Let's have that discussion. But while this crisis is going on, let's figure out the things that we have to do to make it better, and that gives some something of hope to our producers. And we need to get that done. And U.S. Cattlemen's has done a tremendous job. I can't say enough thank you to our team in D.C., all of them. They do a great job of keeping us informed. They do it for little or no pay, too. That goes that we don't get to tell very often, but they work for pennies on the dollar. I can tell you that. We get them full time, and we're very appreciative of that. And we want people to understand that they're as passionate about this as we are. And they dig in there and get their hands dirty, and we got to thank them. But I'll turn to Brooke Miller to send us home. But I think this is a great event. I hope we can continue to do these things. I think that they keep the people informed and get rid of the misinformation. We want to be out there, and we want to, if you have questions, we want to direct them to the people that can get the answers. And so I think this is a great format, and great job, Leah. Thank you guys for being on.
Yeah, well said, Justin. Well said. Gosh, I don't know what to add. I do want to thank everybody for being on. And I want to thank everybody that has been active for United States Cattlemen's Association, working long hours. Justin has been working, and that marketing committee has really been putting in the hours and the time and making some great things happen. Our staff with Western Style Strategies has been they're sending out emails and text messages at midnight. They're just still working. I do want to just John F. Kennedy said, don't ask what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Well, that's what can you do for the cattle market? What can you do for this crisis? United States Cattlemen's Association is working hard to not only get us through this crisis, but also for long-term fixes. And I implore each and every one of you to get active. Start writing your senators, writing your congressmen. A lot of people active on Facebook and social media, but it takes more than that. When I first went to Washington, D.C. many years ago on my first fly-in, I thought that Congress would just do something because it's the right thing to do. That doesn't happen that way, unfortunately, in Washington, D.C. And you've got to figure out a pathway forward and how to get that done. Just because you want something to happen doesn't mean it will happen. So I encourage you all to get involved, go to our website, join our organization. We truly are a members organization, and our members make our policy. And if you want to be involved in policy making, then you just sign up, pay your dues, and get active, and your voice will be heard. So thank you for being on tonight, and God bless you.
All right. Thank you all. Like I said, we'll be in the comments answering your lingering questions, but thank you all for joining, and we'll talk to you at the next one. Facts Only Friday. That was a hashtag.
Thanks, Leah. Thanks.